Hi friends, I'm excited to share this new layout today for our June YouTube sketch hop. Here are all the talented ladies in the hop and all of their channels are linked below. This sketch that we're using this month was picked out by Julie Scott that she found on Pinterest. So it is a fabulous sketch and I enjoyed every minute of creating with it. So I started by pulling out some patterned papers from the Bloom and Grow collection from Cocoa Vanilla. And I started with cutting the 6 rectangles that are kind of offset to the bottom left of the sketch. I did 3x4 rectangles, and then I used my corner rounder here to round all of the corners of those patterned papers that I cut. And those will act as the foundation for where the photo is going to go. So I love the patterned papers in this collection this month. And all of the beautiful colors, and I wanted to make sure and feature lots of those in this layout. So here I am distressing the edges of each of those rectangles, and then I went ahead and placed them where I thought I wanted them to go on the layout, and I kind of have them offset a little bit to the left. I am not measuring here, I'm just tracing around where I have them because I'm going to add some mixed media to the background. So I have the layout kind of turned upside down right now, but they will be in the bottom leftish corner, I would say. I do have a patterned paper strip that's going to go over there on that left side, so where everything is going kind of plays tricks with your eyes here, but I will kind of explain as I go the placement of everything. So I did the pencil markings on the background around where I knew those rectangles were going to go. And now I am adding some Distress Oxide to the background. So this first color that I'm using is Fossilized Amber. And I really wanted to emphasize the yellow because there was not a lot of yellow in the patterned papers that I selected, but it's definitely a prominent color in the collection. So I wanted to have that on the background, and then the navy blue just because I love it. So I started with chipped sapphire. That ended up not being the right navy for this layout. So I go ahead and add that, and then I'm gonna go back over it with faded jeans, and faded jeans is definitely a much better match for the patterned papers. So when I started laying that navy blue patterned paper down right there, I definitely, as soon as I laid it down, I realized, okay, that's not really the right shade of blue. So blues can be a little bit tricky, especially navy blues. And so I wanted to make sure that I got the one that was the closest to the patterned paper. And then I am taking a stencil from Tim Holtz, and it is circles that are kind of distressed looking, so they're not perfect little circles. And I am adding just a little bit of detailing around the outer edge. So right now it looks like I have a lot of color that I'm adding to that background, but most of it will be covered up. So really just the part that's outside of that pencil line will be what shows from behind the patterned papers. So when I start laying those down, it makes a little bit more sense what I'm doing here. Right now it kind of looks like I'm making a Boy Scout layout. These colors remind me of when my brother was little in his little Boy Scout uniform, the navy and gold, but it won't look like that on the final layout. So here I'm adding a little bit of water droplets, just kind of splattering on a little bit of water, and I'm going to use a paper towel to lift up some of the color. And that is not a super prominent thing on the final layout, but you definitely do see it looks like I've added color in layers, and sometimes pulling up a little bit of that color helps with the layering that you see. And then this next layer that I'm adding is, right now I'm adding Color Splash Gold Digger, and that is from Shimmerz Paints, and that is an acrylic spray. So I am definitely not spraying it on because it would go everywhere and it wouldn't be able to stay right exactly where I want it, just acting as a border around the pattern paper. So I just pulled out the end of the sprayer and I'm splattering some color on. And then the navy that I'm using is a Creamies La Peace Dance, and I love Lapis Dance. It's one of my favorite blues, and it is a perfect match for the patterned papers in this collection. So that's a great combination. Faded Jeans and Lapis Dance are a great combo. And I'm just going back with my paintbrush and adding a few more intentional splatters. And then I did set it off to dry for a little while before I started gluing down these patterned papers. It looks like I went straight to the patterned papers, but I did not. I did let it dry for a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and add those rectangles that I've prepared. And I'm just using that ruler as a straight edge, so I'm not measuring or anything. I'm just using it to kind of make sure I have the papers lined up. So I got all 6 of those down, and then I cut some strips of patterned paper. So in this sketch over on that left side, there is, it looks like 2 layered papers, and I am going to use 3. And I did not have one. I loved how in the sketch, one of those strips of paper sort of looks like diagonal lines, and I did not have diagonal lines. But when I was looking at the different pattern papers in the collection, I saw that there was a row of rainbows on one of the patterned papers. And when I trimmed off just the ends of those little rainbows, just the very tip, it looked like little stripes of color. So I loved that. And then I added the more solid orange as the 3rd strip of paper. And then I distressed the edges of each of those, and I do spend some time bending them up because I love to add texture when I can. So I did that over there on that left side. And trim off my paper strips were a little bit longer than my white background. So I went ahead and trimmed that off. And I did not mention it, but I am using Foundations Mixed Media White Cardstock. So that is an American Crafts and Vicki Boutin product. It's one of my all-time favorite products. It makes mixed media backgrounds really easy because you can add lots of wet mediums and color and all kinds of things, and it does not warp. It stays nice and flat on the background. And then I fussy cut out some flowers from that patterned paper. And then I also went through the ephemera set of flowers and pulled out a bunch of flowers that I thought would go well with the layout and the color scheme that I'm going for. And I trimmed off all of the white edges. So there's no white borders on any of my flowers. And then here I took a little bit of white acrylic paint, and I'm going to I started really just in the corners, just in the 4 corners, adding some white splatters of acrylic paint, but then I end up kind of going around the border. So definitely the splatters that are in the corners are a little bit bigger. I did a little bit bigger drops there, but I did do some white splatters all the way around. And that was just to add some visual interest. There was no real huge reason other than I just like how it looks. And then I went ahead and glued down this photo. So this sweet photo is from the first day of school, and I have scrapbooked photos from this day, one for my son's scrapbook and one for my daughter's scrapbook, and now this page is for our family album because it's got me in it. So the 3 of us on our first day of school of this past school year. And then I went through several of the ephemera sets and pulled out some elements that kind of stood out to me in the sketch. So one of those elements is the little banner at the bottom of the photo. And in the sketch, there's just one, but I didn't have one that was as wide as I wanted it. So I ended up using 2 of them. And I actually adore how it ends up looking because they kind of meet in the middle. And I love how that looks. So, and then the little banner at the top, I did not have, when I went through the ephemera set, there was one piece that I really, really liked. That's the one over on the right. And it says Wild and Free up at the top. And then the other 4 pieces I just cut from pattern paper. So I matched that size and shape, and then put those 5 little pieces up there. I will end up distressing the edges of each of those. But first, my banner. I did go ahead and spend some time trimming off the white border off of both of those banner pieces, which is a very tedious task. Good thing I love fussy cutting. But yeah, I definitely spent quite a bit of time cutting the white border off of those teeny tiny little banners. it was sort of distracting to me when it had the white on there. So I like how it looks better without that. And then I popped those up on craft foam. So they sit a little bit higher than my photo. And then I will start working on some of my floral pieces. You can kind of see I am going to do a little floral cluster up there at the top. And I spend some time folding up the petals and the leaves of those flowers. That blue flower ended up being a little bit too big, so I just followed the line of the flower and trimmed it down a little bit to make it a little bit smaller. And then I will go back and add the leaves back to it. So you should never be afraid to adjust your embellishments to make sure that they fit what you're needing them to fit. And it still ends up being a pretty little flower up there, but it's a lot smaller than it started. And then I added that yellow flower and then a sweet little butterfly that I went ahead and trimmed the edges off of as well. And then I will have a floral cluster over there to the left of the photo, sort of very similar to how it was in the sketch. But first I'm going to work on my title. So these laser cut chipboard words came in the Cocoa Vanilla Bloom and Grow collection. And I am going to pull out the words you and me. So they're raw chipboard right now, but I am going to, of course, adjust how they look so that they will match my color scheme that I've got going on. And then I added that little title, or that little phrase piece says, "Bloom where you were planted." And I love the idea of that for a back to school layout. So I thought that was perfect. Okay, so here what I'm doing is I am taking my title pieces and I added a little bit of white gesso. I was thinking at that point that I was going to paint them, but then I quickly changed my mind and decided to emboss them. So I took embossing powder in 3 different colors. And that is just the Versamark ink acts as an adhesive. So it's an adhesive ink pad, and it adheres the embossing powder until you can heat it up. So it kind of binds it all together. And then I will heat it all up once I have all 3 of them ready. And then that's showing you the shimmer that you get, or the kind of the shine that you get when you heat emboss. I love the finished look of that. And I especially like how it looks close up when you in real life. So that title went from, it was a little bit boring with the raw chipboard there, and now it is perfect and matches all of the colors in the collection. So it says you and me. I'm gonna make sure that I get that glued down nice and straight. So my T-square ruler is gonna help me do that. And the theme for our sketch hop this month is summer fun. And once I got done with the layout, I thought, this is actually the end of summer fun and the beginning of the school year. But I don't know, it was still summer technically when we took this picture. So hopefully that fits. All right, so bloom where you're planted. I got the little phrase piece there. And I love how on the sketch it says long title. And I really took that kind of literally. I did it, stretched it across the page there, and it's just overlapping the top right corner of my photo, which is totally okay because it's just kind of dead space in the photo, so that's a little bit blurred out, so it didn't distract from the photo at all. And then somehow I skipped some of my video. I thought I was videoing and it turned off on its own, so I lost a little bit of footage here in the middle. So I added those white phrase stickers. I popped those up on craft foam that are just to the right of the photo down there, and it says growing up so fast, enjoying every moment, what a wonderful world. So I pulled those out from the accessory sticker sheet from Cocoa, the Bloom and Grow collection from Cocoa Vanilla Studio. And I also went ahead and built my clusters, and I added tangled thread in with all of the flowers and then popped the flowers up on craft foam. So that's kind of what was missing what was missing there in the middle. And then my banner, I'm going ahead and poking some holes across, because in this sketch you can see that there was some stitching across that banner in the top right corner, and I go ahead and add some hand stitching. So I picked a yellow, kind of a golden yellowish orangish thread. It's very specific there, yellowish orangish, it's kind of in the middle. And I went ahead and did a back stitch all the way across. I love how that looks. I thought that was a pretty detail in the sketch. And then I added those puffy hearts. They're from the same collection, the Bloom and Grow collection. And it looked like in the sketch there's lots of little tiny details kind of going across that banner, and then also around the floral clusters and around the title. So I go ahead and add some of those all over. And hearts are always a good idea when you're scrapping about a memory that you love. So I loved this day with my babies. And then I'm gonna go ahead and add some half pearls to the centers of my flowers. And then also some crystals in little clusters around the hearts. And then that box of goodies is from, I get asked that a lot. So everything in the box is from Buttons Galore and More, and then the container itself is from the Container Store. So I collected all of those different colors of things and put them together in that box. And then here I'm adding a few pops of color. I will embellish the centers of all of the flowers, and then also add little clusters of dots around the crystals and the hearts and all the little things. Adding all those tiny details is my favorite. And then I also went here with a light aqua and added little dots in between each banner piece. And I thought that looked really cute. So there is the final layout. I have some close-ups coming up, and I hope you will take some time to go and visit all of the other layouts that were made using the same sketch by all of the talented ladies in the sketch shop. It's always fun to see their take on the same sketch, because our layouts always look very different, but I love all of the different ways that we see things. So it's always super fun to see that creative mind work. I hope you guys have a great day. Bye for now.